Welcome to our explainer on the Samsung Empire. You probably look at their logo every single day, right? Maybe you're even watching this on one of their devices. But the actual massive reality of what they do, well, it's kind of a total mystery to most of us.
Think about this for a second. What company built the Burj Khalifa? You know, the tallest building on Earth. You're probably picturing some specialized, massive Middle Eastern construction firm, right? Well, nope. It's actually the exact same tech brand that makes the smartphone currently sitting in your pocket. Yeah, Samsung. Crazy, right?
And hey, if that doesn't blow your mind, this number absolutely will. 20%. This single company is responsible for a staggering 20% of South Korea's entire GDP. I mean, it's almost impossible to even wrap your head around that level of economic concentration in just one single corporate entity.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the South Korean giant. So Samsung actually operates in over 80 vastly different fields. It's like a giant puzzle. They don't just sell you a TV, they literally build the real estate you live in, they sell you life insurance, they operate the resorts you vacation at, and get this, they run educational institutions and hospitals. The whole shebang. They are a true octopus, infinitely more than just a consumer electronics brand.
All of this incredible diversification culminates in a massive $325 billion market cap. Now, to put that into perspective, that valuation puts them toe-to-toe with colossal Indian conglomerates, like the Tata or Adani groups. But here's the kicker. India has over 1.4 billion people. South Korea has just a fraction of that population. Building an empire of this sheer scale in such a small country is an unbelievable feat of business engineering.
Moving right along to Section 2, from noodles to electronics.
This right here is a pure survival story. Back in 1938, a 28-year-old guy named Lee Byung-chul founded Samsung to sell, of all things, everyday groceries. We're talking rice, dried fish, and noodles. Business was steady until 1950, when the devastating Korean War completely ruined the national economy. But instead of folding, Lee pivoted. He noticed the country's sugarcane production and quickly opened sugar mills. That generated cash, so in 1954, he pivoted again, this time into wool and textiles. This aggressive, constant adaptation actually made him the richest man in South Korea. Finally, in 1968, he took the major leap into the electronics market.
And this timeline brilliantly illustrates their relentless speed. I mean, they jumped from their very first product, a basic 12-inch black and white TV in 1968, to microwaves, to air conditioners, all the way to manufacturing personal computers by 1983. In just 15 short years, they went from being the new kid on the block to absolutely dominating consumer manufacturing.
All right, Section 3, the smartphone revolution. Now, what's really interesting about this is that behind the scenes, Samsung played the long game. Before they conquered the phone market, they conquered the components. By 1993, Samsung was the highest chip manufacturer in the whole world. Their semiconductor division was so incredibly advanced that, years later, they actually supplied the processing chips for the very first original Apple iPhone. Think about that. Their biggest future rival absolutely relied on Samsung parts to launch their own revolution.
But making their own phones? Well, that was an incredible underdog struggle. They failed miserably not once, but twice. The 1986 SC100 and the 1988 SH100 were just complete market flops. But they absolutely refused to give up. They went back to the drawing board, obsessed over quality, and finally struck gold with the SH700 in 1993, which was quickly followed by the super hit SH770 in 1994. Success in mobile wasn't instant for them at all. It took real grit.
But once they cracked the code, they took over. By 1996, they had captured a massive 57% of the CDMA phone market, which, if you remember, was the leading wireless network technology at the time. When Reliance introduced CDMA phones to the massive Indian market around 2006, Samsung was perfectly positioned to ride that massive wave of adoption. And when those old network technologies began to fade, they pivoted yet again, launching the massively successful Android-powered Galaxy series in 2009. That really cemented their modern dominance.
Which brings us to Section 4, Miracle on the Han River.
The absolute key to understanding this entire story is this specific term right here, chaebol. These are large, family-owned business conglomerates in South Korea that operate across multiple diverse industries, and specifically with heavy government backing. Honestly, without this unique chaebol system, South Korea's rapid, almost magical rise from post-war poverty to extreme wealth, an era often called the miracle on the Han River, it simply wouldn't have occurred. So the crucial point here is how the South Korean government actively and deliberately nurtured these monopolies to rebuild their ruined economy. We're looking at 4 main steps. First, they took international aid from the UN and the US and diverted it directly to select business groups. Second, government-backed banks basically threw open their vaults, providing cheap loans with extremely minimal interest. Third, they granted favorable operating licenses, cutting right through the red tape. And fourth, they offered massive tax exemptions. They essentially handpicked the winners to build the nation.
Next up, Section 5, Too Big to Fail.
Now, as you might expect, a highly controversial cycle quickly emerged from all this. Just to state the facts here. In 1996, a top executive was accused of bribing the South Korean president, but was ultimately pardoned. Later, in 2008, massive accusations of tax evasion and fraud hit the company. And over the years, additional allegations of political bribery against successors have surfaced. The pattern is completely consistent. Accusations are made, convictions are sometimes secured, but they are subsequently, and almost invariably, followed by presidential pardons.
Which brings us to the ultimate paradox of the chaebol system. These executives are pardoned because the nation's economy literally cannot survive without them. Past, present, and future South Korean presidents know they have virtually no choice. When a single entity is responsible for 20% of your entire national GDP, throwing its leadership behind bars could very easily spark a devastating national economic crisis.
All right, let's bring it all together in Section 6, the power of diversification.
So what is the actual recipe for a corporate empire? Yes, the catalyst was heavy government backing and that chaebol system, but we have to note, other huge companies, like LG, also had that exact same government support. Samsung won the race because of their execution. They paired that national support with unmatched quality, a brilliant strategy of extreme diversification across 80 different fields, and a relentless willingness to iterate through all their early failures.
Which leaves us with a final, fascinating question to reflect on. Is extreme government support for a few handpicked conglomerates the ultimate economic cheat code for rapid nation building? Or does it inevitably create a dangerous moral hazard and an unbreakable monopoly? It's a strategy that pulled an entire war-torn country out of poverty in record time, but the trade-offs are definitely undeniable. It's for sure something to think about the next time you tap the screen on your smartphone. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.